Welcome everybody to EduSmart's professional development series. I'm your one and only Devanshi Mathur, and I will be your MC this evening. Today's session is an incredibly relevant discussion on cross-cutting concepts. And as the president of the Lisa Deslaurier fan club, I get the honor of introducing our speaker for the hour. Just FYI, if you would like to join this fan club, all you got to do is join our emailing list and you will get all the updates on what Lisa's up to. But yeah, it's Lisa. Lisa is the new director of curriculum and professional development here at EduSmart. She is known for offering challenging, creative, hands-on science educator workshops. She has over 34 years of experience in science education. Like literally think of anything in the cross-section of science and education. Lisa came, saw, and conquered. She's done it all. She's been a classroom teacher, department chair, online certification teacher, virtual school curriculum designer, independent science consultant, and science curriculum director. So please give your warmest welcome to our one and only Lisa.
Thank you, Devanshi. Hi, Carol. I know Carol, but just so I get a feel for who's here so I can tailor my discussion, I think we'll take a little bit of time and have you introduce yourself, which we don't normally do, but we have a small group. So Nikki, do you want? Oh, Carol, you can go. I know you, but everyone else doesn't.
I'm Carol Bullock. I'm the 612 Science Curriculum Specialist for Dickinson ISD, and I am 67 days away from retiring after 33 years of service.
Okay. You want to do some curriculum writing?
Maybe, but not at least for a full month. I want to sleep for July.
I'll give you some time to have some enjoyment. I was retired for all of like 6 days, and I loved every minute of it. And then Nikki, can you let us know about you?
Nikki Fales. I am a second grade math and science teacher in Port Arthur ISD.
Okay. And then Miss Moreno.
Hi, I'm Carmenia Moreno, and I am a K-12 science instructional coach for Fort Worth ISD.
Oh, for Fort Worth. Okay. So far everyone's Texas. We do have a lot of people from Florida come. There's 2 people in the waiting room, Devanshi, so I'm going to wait and let them jump in. I didn't have an admit button, but I saw they were there. All right.
There, and thanks, Lisa.
Yeah. Now, okay. I'm showing 15 participants and I'm not seeing everybody. That's because I don't have my screen big enough. I thought we just had a few. All right. Well, maybe since we have more people than I thought, just if you'll let us know either in the chat whether you're from Florida or Texas, because that will help me a lot. Let me find the chat so I can see. So that's all I need to know is if you're from Florida or Texas, because if everyone is from Texas, it's a little bit different than if we have some people here from Florida. I'm going to address Florida anyway, just in case they watch the replay of this, which we post online. This is recorded so that you can see it again. Okay, I'm seeing overwhelming numbers of people from Texas. Okay, so let me know, Devanshi, if someone shows up from Florida, because I'm going to stop reading here. All right.
Sounds good.
So we have a lot of people here from Texas because you have heard that our new science standards are going to have cross-cutting concepts in them, which is why I wrote this PD, because this is not anything to be worried about how am I going to do this on top of everything else that I'm doing. It's a little bit of a change, but it's really more geared toward how you get kids to think about science more than you don't have to cover more topics. So Here's what we have now. For those of you in Texas, we have process skills in our TEKS and we have content TEKS. And we're already used to blending those together. Like you're supposed to incorporate the process skills while you're covering the content. So no problem. You're already used to blending two things. But now we're going to just add something else to the bucket list, which is the cross-cutting concepts. I was in a meeting where TEA was also there, and they let us know that they're not going to call them cross-cutting concepts. They're going to call them recurring themes and concepts, but they're the exact same concepts. And I think they just didn't want to look like they're copying next generation science standards. But we are going to call our process kind of skills the same thing they call in NGSS. So instead of saying process skills, we're going to call them science and engineering practices. We're adding 7 recurring themes and concepts. And then, of course, we have our content TEKS, some of which are new. Those we're not going to talk about today. I really just wanted to lower the anxiety about what the cross-cutting concepts are so that you don't have to worry about how am I going to do this. And implementation for the new TEKS and to do all this now 3-part blending is not going to be until the 2024-2025 school year. But you can go ahead and use cross-cutting concepts now. I'll show you how it's a great tool to even review for STAR at grade 5 and grade 8 in biology. So the cross-cutting concepts came from a body of work called A Framework for K-12 Science Education. That's also where the science and engineering practices are. And the idea is to have kids look at science through a little bit different lens of trying to see connections between things. And the idea behind explicitly covering cross-cutting concepts is to help kids deepen their understanding of the actual science content. And so here's what the 7 cross-cutting concepts are. We have patterns, cause and effect, scale, proportion, and quantity, systems and systems models, energy and matter, structure and function, and stability and change. The 7 cross-cutting concepts in Texas are exactly the same. And so there's no difference between what we're calling recurring themes and what are cross-cutting concepts. And these are just ideas that transcend the discipline that you're teaching. You can find patterns in earth science, life science, physical science. And so these things transcend the actual content. And that's what you want kids to look for because it helps them understand the science at a deeper level. So the first thing we're going to do real quick is go to a breakout room. I don't know how many people we have, but Devanchi's going to break you into, I don't know how many groups. I set up 4. And so just so you know what it looks like, the breakout room should look like this when you go there. If she puts you in breakout room 1, you will go to slide 1. If you're in breakout room 2, you will go to slide 2, which is exactly the same. And then there's a 3 and a 4. And so what I want you to do when you're in your breakout room is to pick someone in your group to be in charge of moving the sticky notes. And so what you can do is drag these around and put them next to the word that you think that it fits, just so you have a little more familiarity before we jump into all of this. So Devanchi, you may go ahead and
put the link in
send
the chat
people
for everyone to use.
Yeah.
And ready, set, go.
There we go. My control panel went away. So we're not going to go through and check this. It was just a way for us to see. So group 2 did not get started. Group 3 got a lot of it done. And group 4 got started. So it's just a way, when I do this live with teachers, we do kind of like, I call it speed dating, where I give them half of a card and they have to go find their partner to match it. So that may be something you can do if you want to do this with other teachers in your district. Devanchi's going to share all the resources from what we're doing today. And that will be in there in case you want to do the activity that way. But we'll go back to the PowerPoint here. And I'm not going to send you to a breakout room anymore. So you'll be glad to hear that. So just for a little bit about patterns, the reason why looking at patterns are important because it can help guide organization and classification. It can help you understand what belongs in a group and what does not belong in a group. And so I have sort of a definition on the right side and examples of how we do this in EduSmart on the left. And that's a good thing to point out. These cross-cutting concepts are already in what you're teaching. You just have to find it. So if you're an EduSmart customer, they're in there. If you have some other company as your resource for science, it's in there too, but you're going to have to look for it. There's not a big glowing sign that says, this is patterns. And so that's why I'm doing this workshop. So patterns really they're useful to look for, especially if kids are analyzing data, because it can help them lead to an understanding of the cause and effect relationships. And we're going to do a demo of how we're going to look at patterns to figure out what's going on. So patterns are useful as evidence to support explanation and argumentation. If your kids do a CER, anyone have trouble with the reasoning part of it? Like kids can do the evidence, but they don't know how to explain their reasoning. And you can have them use these cross-cutting concepts to look for things in the data for their reasoning. I know the data says this, and we saw a pattern of increasing blank. And so they can use these cross-cutting concepts to use as evidence. Cause and effect is super easy to see in science. That's really what we look for when we're doing a lab. I'm not going to read this to you, but this is just saying it can help explain and predict what happens in a new context. Scale, proportion, and quantity really are how we're quantifying how we use math and science. So you need to understand different ways to measure things, differences in scale. A lot of times pictures are shown and kids don't understand that there's a problem with the scale in the picture. It drives me crazy when they show, for those of you who teach secondary, like an example of a prokaryotic and a eukaryotic cell, and they're the same size. When there's a huge factor of difference in scale. And so you have to look at these in order to have a good understanding. Systems and systems model helps you specify what you're looking at and what you're not looking at. So here we have an example of a watershed. So we don't have to pay attention to data that's in a different watershed. We're only looking here. Or if we're trying to understand the phases of the moon, we don't need to see the other planets. We need to know the boundary of what we're looking at. Energy and matter is pretty self-explanatory. My examples here from EduSmart, that they help you track what's going in and what's coming out of a system. And we'll talk about these. We're going to do a lot of examples today. Structure and function is easy. I'm a former biology teacher, and I don't know how many times I have said structure determines function. But that's true for everything, not just things in biology. So any kind of structure determines its function. So stability and change. So this is how do systems stay stable? And if there is a change, how do they get back to that stability again? So what happens if you change a system? Eventually to get back to a point of stability. So let's say this picture up here of the farmland, they're putting water, but they also put fertilizer on it. And so what happens when that fertilizer gets down to a waterway? And can that waterway become stable again because you added a change to it? So that's this big one. So these are tools you can use because it helps kids understand the natural world better. It helps them to see connections between different types of science content, and they can use it to try to make sense out of something that they don't understand, that these are useful tools for that. So for those of you from Texas, our new TEKS are going to have 7 new numbers. They're 5A through 5G for K through 8. Our high school will not have these TEKS only because they got adopted before the K-8 and they won't let us go back and open and put this in high school. That doesn't mean they're not useful to teach high school, but they're just not going to make it into the TEKS. So it goes all the way down to kindergarten using these 7 cross-cutting concepts. Here we have 3rd grade and here they are in 8th grade. It's a little bit easier to see when you do a vertical alignment. So the cross-cutting concept of patterns in kindergarten we're describing, in 3rd through 5th we're explaining, and 6 through 8 we're understanding and connecting. So there's a gradual increase in, say, rigor of what you're going to be doing with these cross-cutting concepts. So again, describe, use, and let's just say quantify, I've got a typo, and analyze, examine, and model. And so we see describe, explain, analyze, and explain for structure and function. So do we have anyone on here from Florida? I know Arlene's here, so I'll talk about it just for that. So just because the cross-cutting concepts are not explicitly outlined in your Nature of Science standard, it doesn't mean that they're not in your science courses. And so I just pulled some examples of some of your science standards. This is a 3rd grade Earth Science. Explain that stars can be different. Some are smaller, some are larger, some appear brighter than others. So that scale here, proportion and reasoning. 4th grade, relate the rotation of the Earth and apparent movement of the sun, moon, and stars. That's going to be a system. A 7th grade here, identify patterns within the rock cycle and relate them to events that are occurring. And then a high school one here, identify basic trends in hominid evolution, including brain size, jaw size. Those are also measurements that would be scale, proportion, and quantity. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do some practice, and you are going to type some things into the chat box for your answer so we can practice doing this before I lead you into a lesson. So in person, I would call this a station rotation, and I would have pictures out at lab tables with numbers next to them. We can't really do that online. And I want to also cover one of my pet peeves, which is moving from one group to another rotation. If you move from one place to another around the room, are you rotating? Someone want to chip in here? No, you are revolving. If you're rotating, you're spinning on your own axis. And so realize that this is why students have so much trouble with rotate and revolve, is because every time they hear the word rotate in their everyday life, it's usually in an incorrect context. So you should say revolve from station to station instead of rotate. So that's why I put it in quotes. So if you wanted to do this, again, you're going to get a copy of the slide deck so you can use my pictures that I'm doing here. This is a great review for state assessments, that you can find examples of the cross-cutting concepts in a picture form. I'm going to give you a lot of examples you're welcome to use. And you have kids determine which one they think is a pattern, and then they have to tell you why it's a pattern or why this picture is showing cause and effect. And so you can go across the whole year in terms of content with just as many stations as you want to set up. You need at least 7. I would probably try to do more, and so that they can't eliminate one if it's the last one left, that you want more than 7. It could be 8, you could have 1 extra, but when I set it up with teachers, I set it up with 14, but we're going to do even more than that. So what I have here is an example. I'm trying to put the chat where I can see it. And I'm reminding you on the side what the cross-cutting concepts are and given a number next to it. So what I want you to do in the chat is put what you think this picture is illustrating which one of these concepts? So I'm seeing scale, proportion, and quantity. We'll talk about that. What else is this? Here's a hint. This is called the what? The solar. There we go. Solar system. There we go. I'm not sure. It could be structure and function if they have information about the structure. I'm not sure they get that in this picture. But broadly, this is a system and it's a model of a system. If we're talking about scale, proportion, and quantity, is this an accurate model of the solar system? No. It has the planets in order, but they are definitely, their orbits are not to the proper scale. And so you could talk about that. What is wrong with how it's being represented? Okay, so let's do another one. What about this one? No pressure on getting it right. Feel free to guess. Okay, I'm seeing 1 and 5. Structure again, number 6. Okay, so it brings up a good point in that you could really assign more than one cross-cutting concept to a picture. And as long as the student would be able to back it up with evidence why they think this is illustrating patterns, then that's fine. There can be more than one. These are pervasive themes throughout science. I probably would have picked patterns only because I really like the Fibonacci sequence, which is what this is illustrating, but absolutely structure and function. You could say what these plant parts are doing and what's happening here is different than what's happening over here. And that's why they have a different structure. The petals from the flowers here, these other flowers, is because they have a different function. System and system model. I would have to hear the evidence for that. I don't doubt that you're right. I don't see it though. Doesn't mean you're wrong. Just means I'm not making that connection. So let's do another one. What about this one? I'm seeing cause and effect. Okay. Everyone's saying cause and effect. 2 and 5, systems and systems models. Yes, 1, a pattern. Okay, 5, system. All right. You could even do matter and energy. Really, if they did a way to explain how they back it up. The only matter is really water, but that we have energy changes when we go from one of these forms of water to another. So any of those could be correct. This one is a little more simple. I should have started with one that was easier and moved on to the ones that have multiples. So Alex was out with the flu. When he came back, Rachel drank some of his orange juice, and a week later she got the flu. Right, cause and effect. What about this one? You don't have to understand the picture to be able to find the cross-cutting concept. So if you wanted them to back it up with explaining the evidence, that would be harder, but you can at least pick one here. I'm seeing systems and systems models. Yeah, I would agree with that. What about this one? It's blurry. Do you need to be able to read it? No. Right. Structure and function. Someone said scale, proportion, and quantity. Absolutely. They could talk about why are these bones, they're different than this bone. And talking about the Fibonacci sequence that shows up in the length of the bones from the smallest to the largest there too. This one is also a little more clear cut. What do we think here? I'll wait till at least 1 or 2 people guess. Matter. Okay, it is matter. I'm not sure I see the energy part of it, but there are some numbers on there. So that's usually a clue. Right. This in the bottom is showing you the proportion. There's 1 in 100 here, 1 to 1,000, 1 to 10,000, 1 to 100,000. And so it's showing you serial dilution, which is a proportion. Here's some pictures where we often see, we have graphs like this on state assessments that we have kids try to analyze. So what cross-cutting concept is there here that you could justify with evidence? Stability and change. Okay. Do we know the difference between the experimental and the control group? No. So it's possible, but you would have to have more information for that one. So cause and effect. Again, to explain it, you would have to know that. To me, this is a pattern. As the days go on, there's more growth. It gets bigger and bigger, both in the experimental and the control group. The experimental just lagged behind a couple of days. Here's another graph. It's a little blurry, but.
Can I ask a question, or
Absolutely.
are you waiting for the end? I'm sorry, but I'm just learning about this, so please bear with me.
Yeah.
In the slide, the preceding slide, wouldn't that have been stability and change? Because isn't the control group stability and the change the experimental group, or am I totally wrong? Or should we talk about this?
You're making a comparison, but the
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would pick scale, proportion, and quantity over that because the rate of change is different. But literally, if you could find a way to back it up and explain it to me, I would accept it as a correct answer. If you look deep enough into anything, you could find cross-cutting concepts there. So this one,
Thank you.
Yeah. What do we see here? So we see the rabbits increasing, and when the rabbits increase, what happens to the wolves?
While you were answering the question, we got a lot of 3, 2s, and 1s.
Oh, okay, sorry.
You're
So
good.
this one, yeah, it could be cause and effect, really, because they're interrelated. But kids may also point out that it follows a pattern. It goes up and then down and then up and then down. So this could have another one too. Thanks, Devanshi. And what about this? I'm seeing 3, 5, 1, and 2. Okay, some are 5s. Okay, no one's, from what I see, no one's picking the one that I would have said first. It doesn't mean you're wrong. Oh, no, someone did. I would have picked, energy and matter first, because that's what they're showing here is how energy is moving through an ecosystem. But it is a model of an ecosystem, so you could also put 5. I don't know what else. Cause and effect. You could teach cause and effect with the picture, but you probably would have to change something in here in order to look at the effect. So this one is easy. So for the little ones, especially for kindergarten, they can do this too. You would have to explain what they are first, but you don't have to use images with numbers and reading that they could figure out that this is cause and effect. If you run through a stick in your bicycle wheel, it's going to make you fall down. What about this one? Six, structure and function. Absolutely. They also have some red dots on this one, which tells me that I can make some measurements or look for a pattern. So this could also be patterns and scale, proportion, and quantity. Here we have an overhead picture of a waterway, and something is going on here. Seeing structure and function, to cause and effect. Okay. So we don't really know what the cause was, but we know what happened here, and it has an effect here. It's also, someone's put stability and change. Absolutely. That we have put something out in this waterway. Is the waterway going to stay with a black current here forever, or is it going to eventually go back to a normal water system? It may not be exactly the same, but you're not going to come back tomorrow and see the same pattern. It's going to move towards stability. And here I wanted to use a picture that maybe most of us are not familiar with to point out that you don't have to deeply understand the content to find a cross-cutting concept. So anyone have a guess what this could be? Someone has system and system models, stability and change. I don't know if that was from the previous one. I would pick 6, structure and function, only because I see that these all have different names. And they probably have a name because they all look different from each other. So that's why I would pick structure and function. These are antibodies, anyone who knows immunology. Here we have one that's just a picture again. So is there a pattern? Goes orange, yellow, orange. Not sure I see a pattern. If you can find one for me. It also goes sort of medium, medium, small, medium, medium. So that doesn't look like a pattern. Structure and function, you could talk about an individual kayak here and about its structure. But I would say it's scale, proportion, and quantity. Some of them are smaller, some of them are bigger. But again, whatever you can justify with evidence would work. And so here we have a pathway here explaining how childbirth happens. For those of you who have no idea exactly what's going on in this picture, how does the uterus know what to do, when to contract? So I see someone put cause and effect. Someone has structure and function. Okay. Okay, system and system model could also be that. I probably would have picked stability and change for this because we had a stable system. We need to do a change to get the baby out of the uterus, right? And then it's going to go back to the stable system again. But if you wanted to explain it in terms of systems, go for it. If you can justify it and explain it, you can see how we're talking higher level about the content than you do just when you explain the content itself. That you're seeing connections that you didn't see without looking at your key of cross-cutting concepts. I'm going to have to speed through some of these or we're not going to get done. So this is going to be our last one. So we have pattern. Okay, what else? I don't know where the numbers are coming from. System and system models. Yeah, that's what I would have picked. But you could also do matter and energy, that there's matter in the battery that gets converted to energy, but this is showing a series and parallel circuit, which is kind of a system. So I have more, but we're just going to have to go through a little bit faster here to get to our actual activity. I'm going to share all of these with you so that you can use these pictures in your classroom. Don't use the ones like of the antibodies where the kids won't even know what they are. And you can find relevant pictures to your content. And you can even do a screen capture and use some stuff from EduSmart or just show what's up on the screen. But the idea behind this, I told you, you're already used to blending science content with the process skills. Now we're going to just add the cross-cutting concepts, and that's what's called three-dimensional learning. You may have heard this because this is what they use in most states when the next generation science standards. And again, Implementation of all of this is not going to be until the 2024-2025 school year. So how can I start using this now? So I don't have to do this and all of the new TEKS content at the same time. You can use specific language. If you're having kids look at clouds, ask them, what pattern did you see? Did something change? Why did something stay the same? Were some of the clouds bigger or smaller than the other clouds? You already ask questions like this when your kids do analysis. So you use cross-cutting concepts. Or if you use a claim evidence reasoning frame, go ahead and just add another frame at the bottom that says cross-cutting concept or recurring theme. Did you see one? And then have the 7 they can pick from. Did you see it in this investigation? And if you did, where's the evidence of it? So that's super easy to do. What's a little bit harder is to use it to teach the content. And so that's what I'm going to give you an example of. It's going to be very quick. And that is to try to have kids make sense of what they see around them. And so I'm going to go through these 4 steps one at a time. And I'm going to have to get up out of my seat and go do a demonstration. And if you have seen this demonstration, let me stop sharing for a minute. No, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to share. How do we do this, Devanshi? Just like this. Can you make me? How do we do this to make me?
See if I can.
There we
There
go.
We go. You've made
Yeah, you need to
for
spotlight
everyone.
me. And so I'm going to do a demonstration. The purpose behind it is not to know the answer. So you may have seen the demonstration before, but being able to explain it is not the point. We're going to use it to teach cross-cutting and use cross-cutting concepts to figure out what's going on. So can everyone see me back here? Let me unblur. Sorry, it's cutting part of me off. Where am I, Devanshi? That's not what I wanted. Where am I? Can you do it for me? Because I can't see me at the top.
I don't know if I can unblur your background, but if
Okay.
you keep your kind of hands at the edge of the cups, we can see them.
Okay, so I have some water that's sealed, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some water in one of these cups. I'm going to move the cups around, and you're going to keep your eye on the cup and tell me which one you think is the one that I put the water in. So I'm going to add around 20 milliliters of water. Everyone paying attention to which cup I put it on? So now I'm going to move the cups around. Hopefully not knocking me over like I did when I practiced this with Devanshi. Okay. Can someone have a guess which one they think it is? You can unmute yourself real quick.
Middle. Everyone's writing in middle.
Everyone's saying middle. So this is the cup I put the water in. Everyone see what happens? Okay. So it's not that one. So which one of these did you think it
You
was?
drank it, Lisa.
You think it's this one?
It's the first one everyone's writing.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not that one.
The other
So it has
first
to be
one.
this one.
What just happened? Oh, come on.
I can tell some of you have not seen this before, which is wonderful. And if you have, I'm going to show you how to use it as a teaching tool. So let me go back to share my screen and go back to here. And what we're going to do is try to identify productive questions and goals. So asking what happened inside the cup is not helpful because they don't know how to make sense of what happened. So you can say, how can we organize our observations? Well, we can write down what went into the cup, and we can write down what came out of the cup, and we can make some observations about that. So I've done it for you. Tell them, don't just guess, look for patterns in the data. So for one of the cups, nothing went in, nothing came out. That's our observation. Another one, nothing went in, nothing came out. But for one of them, water went in and nothing came out. So this is not following the pattern. And so we have to look further for direct your questions toward what could have been the cause of that discrepancy. And let's use what we know about cross-cutting concepts to figure it out. So the question is, what causes the water to disappear, or even did the water disappear. They need to understand the rules behind science here. We have to have rules. Water's made of matter. Matter's always conserved. Matter cannot just disappear. So did the water disappear? No. Okay. So we have to develop a claim then that either the water, the matter stayed inside the cup, or somehow it got outside of the cup, but it didn't disappear. And so then they may recognize that some questions are more productive to investigate than others. So where'd the water go? There's something happened inside the cup, these kind of things. And so you can use the cross-cutting concepts for tools to try to figure out what happened. And so help them guide the search for more evidence. They're not going to be able to put together a data chart like this. And so you're going to have to help them organize this to track what happens. So there's some information we can get from this. Can we measure the mass of the cups before the demo and after the demo? Yeah. So let's gather some data. I did it for you. The patterns give us more evidence. So we see something here about the mass of the cup before we started. It didn't have the same mass. So that's interesting. I told you I tried to add about 20 milliliters of water, and now this has 20 grams more of mass than it did to start with. And so when I added water, it increased the mass of this cup. These remained unchanged because I didn't pour any water into them. So what does this tell you? Number one, that when I poured water into it, it stayed inside the cup because the mass increased by the amount of water I put in, right? And so now we can think about why is this number 20 when the other started with 10? What had to be true for that to happen? And then you can always use an analogy of, have you ever put water in something before? There was something in that cup, right? We don't know what it was, but it weighed 10 grams, right? There was something already in the cup. It was the same kind of cup. It wasn't a different kind of cup. And so let's apply that sort of logical reasoning of looking at an analogy. And they probably are familiar with a hummingbird feeder. So let's compare that mystery cup to a hummingbird feeder. And we'll look at it at input and output. If you're using a hummingbird feeder, you put sugar and liquid water in. If you're in the cup C, I put in liquid water, but there was some kind of unknown substance here. And so when we make observations and we look at what comes out, nothing came out. We put liquid water in, nothing came out. We did not get a substance with properties of both of what we put in. What we have is something that's no longer a liquid. Because if there was liquid in the cup and I turned it upside down, it doesn't matter what the liquid was, it would come out, right? And so this is the key here. The substance is no longer a liquid. So now is the time that you could try to have them guess. What could be something that when you poured it in a cup would do something where the water would not be liquid water anymore or pourable liquid water anymore? And so I'm just going to tell you the answer, but you would want to lead them into understanding. And that is that I put something in the cup first, right? And what I put in was sodium polyacrylate, which is what you find in diapers. Sodium polyacrylate can absorb 800 times its own mass in water and liquid. If it's water, it doesn't absorb 800 times its own mass in urine, which is what they're designed for. But this is why you can't wear regular diapers in a swimming pool. They absorb so much water, it could actually pull an infant under the surface. But 800 times its own mass. So that's why they have swim diapers if you're going to get someone in a pool. And hopefully, if you have a baby, that you don't let the diapers get this absorbed with urine. But because urine has salt in it, it changes the absorbent properties of that powder that's in there. And so they don't hold as much. So the reaction of what happened is that it caused the water to solidify. It got absorbed by this chemical, and so it won't come out of the cup when you turn it upside down. So I wanted to give you a way to use it in your teaching as well as practice and identifying what the cross-cutting concepts are. but kids need to learn to practice evidence-based reasoning and trying to make sense of things that they're unfamiliar with. And you can use those cross-cutting concepts to do that, to ask questions based on patterns, to look for evidence behind cause and effect, to apply those rules of science. And so kids need both, you need to teach them both science content, like the facts, and you need to give them some kind of structural framework where they can develop that higher order thinking. And that's the whole idea behind these cross-cutting concepts, is it lets you see things that you wouldn't have seen if you didn't have those cross-cutting concepts in mind. And so that was what was fabulous about the examples that we did, when people saw different things. That some of you could teach me something that I didn't see. And the kids are going to find patterns or find a cross-cutting concept that you never thought of, but they're going to be able to back it up. And that is not a lot of work for you, because you just have to find pictures for that activity. And the kids have to do an awful lot of thinking, which is always good. So I'm going to stop there for questions, but also to let you know before I stop my PowerPoint is that also sort of coming with the new TEKS is the idea that you're going to be teaching science with a storyline, and that you have to start with what we call an anchoring phenomenon. And because this is new to Texas and probably new to Florida, I'm going to have a whole session on just what is a phenomenon, what are some examples, and how do you anchor learning to it to complete a storyline. If you came to my driving questions board, we hit on that topic in that one too, but more deep into the content. So Devonji put a link to that registration, but I want to make sure that you have time for question and answers here.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Yeah, I just wanted to make it not seem so scary that we have to do one more thing on top of everything else we're doing, that this is really, it's a good thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. We have about 4 minutes before we will, actually, sorry.
We're a little out of
6
time,
minutes.
but we'll stay. So.
Absolutely, yes. So do stay with your questions and answers, but just for the sake of recording, so I don't want to cut it off, I'm going to bid you all farewell, but then do stay for a Q&A. Thank you so much, Lisa, for taking the time and catching us up on all these changes that are happening. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today and participating at every turn of this PowerPoint, this presentation. It's been wonderful. I hope you'll have a wonderful Wednesday, and we will see you next time.
I just wanted to say one more thing, that you're going to have new science materials in the new adoption, and no matter what you choose, we hope you choose EduSmart, but they're all going to have this language in all of the new materials, that you're not going to have to find ways to build all this from scratch. But I just wanted you to be familiar with it, even to go ahead and start using it, because I think you can see it's a powerful tool for student learning. So.